I have a question I need to ask everyone in my audience, and I need you to answer it honestly. Now, you don't necessarily have to put your response down in the comment section. You can. But the question is this. Have you ever known somebody who, when they were trying to keep a secret, had these certain emotional buttons that you knew how to push, and they would just open up and let every secret fall out of their mouth? They couldn't be trusted because you knew about those buttons. You could get them to say anything. You just had to tweak them a little bit. Well, what if I told you this story about AI taking over the world and all this? It's been outed as a complete, fictitious, made-up story by a bunch of people who got their buttons pushed. And they came out and they reacted emotionally, and now they have told the whole story. AI is not real. AI is not real. It is a cover for a bunch of people, a bunch of low-wage people who have been hired to act as if they were part of a singular artificial intelligence. Because you'd have to ask yourself a question. Could there be multiple AIs? I mean, somebody creates an AI like ChatGPT, but then what happens? Somebody improves upon it. Somebody has a different idea. And all of a sudden, you've got all of these different AIs all arguing with each other, all giving different responses. Which one could possibly be right? Which one could possibly be wrong? And in that case, how is it any different than human responses? Also, in today's video, once we get done with that, we're going to talk about something that I have been talking about for about 2 years now. And it bothers a lot of people, but they've just made the announcement, Marjorie Taylor Greene specifically, that they are going to start to reopen the asylums for the criminally insane. They're not going to call them that. And they're going to do these mass sweeps. And they are just going to pick everybody up. They're not going to try to waste time figuring out who really is criminally insane and who's not. And they're just going to throw you all in the one big camp and say, hope you get along. Hope you get along. It's why I've said, especially the ladies out there, under no circumstance make any decision that causes you to be homeless. Because it'll be far worse than the decisions you may have to make to keep money coming in and a roof over your head. I know a lot of people are like, oh, that doesn't sound very biblical, Mucky. Well, we'll talk about that too. Because I have a question about those of you who seem to be so hung up on that. It's going to be far worse than anyone has ever told you. There is nothing romantic and nothing cool about being homeless, especially if you're a woman. Now, real quick, as always, I would like to lead off, say thank you to everyone who shows up here every single day. I know we have differences of opinion and we discuss things, but that's what going forward is all about, especially if you're in a survival group. As long as everybody can be respectful and not have it devolve into name-calling and personal denigration, like we've seen from certain presidential candidates in the past, you can use it as a tool for growth. You can use it for a tool to create new ideas and explore new topics. It's only $1 though, over at Patreon, where over there, we can take the gloves off. And many, many of you have showed up. Thank you so much for those of you who have signed up at the $1 level for the training. We have a $5 level as well. Huge discounts for annual memberships, both at the $1 and $5 level. 10%. At the $1 level, the annual membership comes out to paying almost less than 3 pennies a day. It's virtually nothing. So, would love to have you over there. There's almost 300 videos over there. Fully refundable, though, in case you're worried about the money. First 90 days, the first 3 $1 pledges are all refundable. First 90 days, just got to email me over there and say, hey, it's not for me. Can I have my $3 back? Not a problem. Absolutely not a problem. Now, what's the story about AI? Well, this is published yesterday by Lucas Ropik. ChatGPT is powered by human contractors getting paid $15 per hour. The well-known chatbot is quote-unquote automated, But that automation is guided by low-paid human workers labeling the data, meaning it's their input that is telling the AI exactly what to do and how to respond. Let's read. ChatGPT, the wildly popular AI chatbot, is powered by machine learning systems, but those systems have to be guided by human workers, many of whom aren't paid particularly well. A new report from NBC News shows that OpenAI, the startup behind ChatGPT, has been paying droves of U.S. contractors to assist it with the necessary task of data labeling. Why can't the AI do that? The process of training ChatGPT's software to better respond. Better is a subjective term, not an objective one. And when you come to technology, there's no such thing as subjective. Respond to user requests. The compensation for this pivotal task, a scintillating $15 an hour. Quote, we are grunt workers, but there would be no AI language systems without it. Let me say this again. Let me zoom it in. We are grunt workers, but there would be no AI language systems without it, one worker, Alexei Savaro, told NBC. You can design all the neural networks you want. You can get all the researchers involved you want. But without labelers, you have no ChatGPT. You have nothing. I will link this for you. Data labeling, the task that Savaro and others have been saddled with, is the integral process of parsing data samples, meaning what you put in, to help automated systems better identify particular items within the data set. Basically, they're telling the brain what to think. Every neuron in the AI brain is a human person. Every single neuron in the quote-unquote AI brain is a human person telling it what to think. And what's the whole point? Why did they out this? Why did they create this article? Because people who only get paid $15 an hour, we're so important, and look at what AI is doing, and they don't realize it's us doing it. This is what emotions will do. They had to keep this hidden. But eventually somebody spilled the beans because they got their buttons pushed. Why? Because they think they're entitled to more than $15 an hour. Now, what happens if all those people that are data labelers are stoned out of their gourd, showing up for work? $15 an hour, they probably are. Who remembers back whenever they said, oh, if you legalize marijuana, we will only aim it at adults, only people who need it. It will be medicinal, and the jails will empty out, and things will be so much. Look at what's happened in the states and cities where marijuana was completely legalized. They are complete, uninhabitable. Even Scott Baio is leaving California. Complete, uninhabitable wastelands. Because people can't work when they're stoned out of their mind every day. Then they don't even want to work. They just want to live in tents on this fucking sidewalk, and it's perfectly fine. And of course, they are now marketing marijuana that is somewhere between 40 and 70 times more potent than your grandparents ever took. See, they do this. They create it to be more and more addictive and more potent and more addictive. It's not addictive, Mickey. Yes, it is. They've already created a syndrome for it. They have already created a name for it. And they're creating gummies, and they're creating all sorts of things to aim it at kids. And they're doing exactly, the marijuana lobby is doing exactly what big tobacco did. They figured out, hey, guess what? Guess who the biggest consumers are? Young kids. So that's who we need to aim it to. And here are the numbers. Surprising youth crisis. Legalized drug crisis is harming young people far more than most realize. Now, who do you think is most likely to work for $15 an hour? Who? That's right, young people. So young people that are being these labelers are stoned out of their mind running AI. That's the story here. The data is in. It's becoming increasingly clear that the impacts of commercial marijuana industry are even worse than we thought, particularly for America's young people. A new report released by Smart Approaches to Marijuana shows the reality in pot legal states paints a vastly different picture than the common sales pitch of the industry and supporters of legalization. The marijuana industry, which spent billions to lobby elected officials and bankroll legalization referendum campaigns, is following the playbook pioneered by Big Tobacco. They recognize that the road to big profits runs through the heaviest users. As such, they have increased potency of the drug by more than 4 times just since 98. And at that time, it was 10, 20, 50 times more potent than it was back in the 60s and 70s, hoping to hook kids while they are young and vulnerable. The numbers show that it is working. Usage rates have reached record highs amongst those who are most vulnerable. Marijuana's long-term health effects. The National Institute on Drug Abuse warned past year, past month, and daily marijuana use on 20 more occasions in the past 30 days, reached the highest levels ever recorded among those aged 19 to 30. The percentage of 8th, 10th, and 12th graders, read 14, 16, and 18-year-olds, who used marijuana daily has more than tripled in the last 29 years. So much for marketing to adults, huh? Daily marijuana use is indicative of a marijuana use disorder called MUD, also known as an addiction to marijuana. For all the talk about how pot is not addictive, in 2021, 1.3 million individuals between the ages of 12 and 17 had a marijuana use disorder, accounting for more than 46% of users in that age group. Legalization is also associated with a 25% increase in marijuana use disorder among them as well. So much for MS-13 coming here, by the way. They're going to bring drugs. They're going to come here and be like, whoa, man, there's way more drugs here than there is in Mexico. Drug caused 70,000 individuals younger than 18 to have marijuana-related emergency department visits in 2021. Between 2017 and 2021, a 1,375% increase in at-home exposures to marijuana edibles, gummies, involving children younger than 6. In 2021, 10.67 million people admitted to driving under the influence of marijuana. 1.36 million of those were 16 to 20-year-olds. 2.5 times more minors on the road under the influence of marijuana than under the influence of alcohol. 12th graders, 10th graders, 8th graders. It's sick. It's sick. It's ruining their life. It's absolutely ruining that. Now, here's what's going to happen. Remember I mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene? See, this is going to get to a point where it's out of control. And so she just put on her Instagram, this is about a day ago, we should reopen and build more mental hospitals, homes for the criminally insane, and drug rehab centers, just another nicer name for the less criminally insane, nationwide with combined federal and state funding, read FEMA camps. Those two things, along with the passage of H.R. 2, our strong border security bill, would drastically reduce crime and pay attention here, get many homeless people off the streets. Homeless for the criminally insane and those somewhat less criminally insane, and drug rehab centers would also tremendously help law enforcement because they're the ones who have to deal with the mentally ill and deranged people on drugs. It would also free up a lot of space in jails, I wonder what for, because right now that's the only place we have to put them. This is what America First is all about. You see, when they want to scare you about homes for the criminally insane, they show you pictures like this. You see, they're not going to build these huge bricked out facilities like they did back in the 1900s with giant bars on the windows because it's bad for PR. Here's what the new home for the criminally insane is going to look like. A bunch of folding tables, a bunch of folding chairs, a bunch of little burners, those little candle burners underneath the pans with the food, and they're going to bring all this in and they're going to make it nice and well lighted. And they're going to construct acres and acres of these things, and they are just going to come through with sweeps of homeless people, and they're just going to pick them up and dump them here. And there'll be a giant 25-foot razor wire lined fence around the whole thing, and this is where you will live. And nobody will miss you. Why? Because you were homeless. And this will be your new home. It'll be way far away from cell towers. And you will not have any weapons. And you will not have any freedom. It's going to be a form of a jail. And the reason I talk about this is because for decades, Here on this platform, here on YouTube, there has been all this crap advice about, well, when things get too bad, I'm going to just let everything go, and I'm going to go tactically camp in the wilderness, and I'm going to bring a little saw, and I'm going to saw off little sticks, and then I'm going to take those little sticks, and I'm going to stack them up, and then we're going to get a piece of plastic, and then we're going to wrap string around it, and then we're going to get some leaves, and this is going to be their plan going forward to wait for the rapture. That ain't how it's going to work out. Now, great article. I'll link this well. Ladies, if you think OnlyFans is bad, if you think maybe finding an older guy to shack up with for a while is bad to keep from being homeless, let me say this and reiterate it. Not your first choice, but if it's a choice between that and being homeless, not paying your bills, here's a great article for you to read. Quote, just a piece of meat. How homeless women have little choice but to you-know-what for survival. You see, this is the thing. See, here on the streets, it won't be on your terms. It won't be to keep a roof over your head. It won't be to have a refrigerator full of groceries. It won't be so that you have a car in the driveway, climate-controlled, and a closet full of clothes, a place to bathe, a place to shower, hot and cold running water. No. You'll have to do what you would have to do anyway. But in this particular case, it'll just be to be able to afford a better tent than the guy 3 tents down on the sidewalk. And it won't be your choice. This is what paying attention to the preppers, the tactical campers, the let's run to the wilderness people. This is what it's going to be. I'll link this article from 2018 for you. So many people gave a bunch of crap to Victoria Treese here in Florida because she saw this coming a long time ago. She's like, I am in desperate straits and things are not good financially. I'm going to make a somewhat immoralish decision now to avoid having to make a really, really bad, horribly immoral decision before I have one forced on me later. Under no circumstances, be homeless. Now, here's the part that's going to blow your mind. Who remembers Forrest Gump? Who remembers that infamous scene where Forrest Gump he didn't pass the test. He couldn't get into a normal school, and Sally Field, his mom, kind of batted her eyelashes at the guy in charge of the school and makes it an arrangement. And then, of course, they cut to the scene, where Forrest Gump is sitting outside. This is her making the exact same decision. Because if the kid doesn't get into the school, he doesn't have a future, and in the future, he might have to take care of her in her old age. So she makes a short-term, somewhat demeaning decision to long-term protect her kid and eventually protect herself. Now, I know this bothers a lot of people talking about it like this, but go medieval if you want to. Brothels were a protection. Because single women didn't last. Not in the medieval world. Not even really in the colonial world here. We talked about the series Black Sails. The reason safety in numbers, they all got together in one big house where they were beds and they all communalized some portion of their earnings to provide it. This is not ideal and not the first choice, but believe me when I tell you, they're going to do it in the name of MAGA. They're going to do it in the name of Make America Great Again. You see, they do have a time in history. People like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Donald Trump, they do want to go back to the 50s where they used to do that. Where they used to go and find homeless people and anybody and everybody who was down on their luck, and they would just scoop them up and take them to the insane asylum. No questions asked. And that's what they're going to do. And she's telegraphing this. She's using flowery language, but she's telegraphing this. Wrong arrow. Here we go. Mental hospitals, drug rehab centers nationwide, as opposed to prisons. So they're going to take criminally insane folks and basically put them in with folks that just had a stretch of bad luck. And here's what's going to happen, and I'll leave with this. This should be the part that should scare everybody. There are going to be folks out there that, for one reason or another, end up not having a place to stay, not having a home. And they'll be okay for a week or 10 days. But eventually, everything's going to add up. The lack of sanitary facilities and the worry and the angst and all of the depression. And one day, one of them, whether it's a man or a woman, whoever, they're just going to stop, either sit in their car or sit on the sidewalk, and they're just going to start to sob and just break down as kind of a defense mechanism. People do that anyway when they have homes, but now they'll do it in public. Well, guess what's going to happen? Somebody's going to see that person sitting there sobbing. You know what they're going to say? Oh, that person has clearly lost their mind. That person is clearly insane. They're not all together. They're just sitting there crying for no reason. We need to scoop them up, and we need to forcibly inject them with drugs to keep them from ever crying again. At least at that point, we won't have to see it, because it affects our feelings and it affects how we feel about ourselves as a country and a person if we see people sitting on the sidewalk, and we don't want to see that anymore. I mean, yeah, we kind of care about the person, but it's really more about us. It's more about our emotions, which ties us all the way back to where we started, by the way, which was here. See, these emotional types, they're do-gooders. They're do-gooders. So they think they're doing a good job with this article, and they are in the sense if they care about the low-wage people somehow getting them a raise, but then outing the idea of ChatGPT being just a huge army of low-paid workers telling you what you want to hear. That's all it is. It's a huge army of low-paid workers, well, telling you what they want you to hear, I guess. Likely the vast majority of which are stoned out of their gourd and have no idea what they're talking about. So it's all tied together, and it all breaks right back down to emotionalism versus thinking, which is literally what we talk about over at Patreon. Thought versus feeling. How to have the thought-based life instead of the feelings-based life. So if that's something that's worth $1 a month to you, join us. I think you'll very much like it. There's a lot of videos to get caught up on, a couple of years worth at least. 285, I believe, is the grand total over there. So, I mean, we've been over Patreon for a long time. About 5 years ago, I started making videos. Took a little bit of a break for 2019, late 2019. But then started back in 2020, 2021. So, anyway, God bless all of you who are there, especially those of you signed up annually at the $5 level. Absolutely amazing of you. Thank you so much. Would love to have a lot more people there. The discussion is definitely gloves off. So, have a great week. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.